The flames reached the lifeboats before the crew could even cut them loose. It was just after 2 a.m. in the pitch dark of the Arabian Sea. The MS Georges Philippar, a modern French luxury liner on her maiden return voyage, was supposed to glide silently across the water, sleek and serene, bound for Marseille by way of Djibouti. Instead, she burned. Her corridors lit not by lamps, but by fire. Her wood-paneled salons twisted into blackened tunnels of smoke and molten brass. Passengers ran barefoot across hot decks, some wrapped in bedsheets, others holding children. Screams echoed between walls that moments earlier had hosted string quartets and champagne. The ship's engines groaned. Power flickered. Somewhere below deck, fire surged through the wiring like blood through veins. And in the middle of it all, Albert Londres, France's most celebrated investigative journalist, was nowhere to be found. By the time the sun rose over the black plume of smoke, the fire had claimed over 50 lives. The ship, crippled and glowing, was barely afloat. But for Albert Londres, this was more than a tragedy. It may have been an assassination. The Georges Philippar was named for Georges Philippar, head of the Messageries Maritimes Company, the French state-sponsored line that ran ships between France and its colonies in Africa and Asia. Her construction was meant to represent the new era of French engineering, diesel-powered instead of coal-burning, Art Deco interiors, modern navigation systems. She was sleek, efficient, beautiful, and dangerous. From the very beginning, the Georges Philippar was a source of internal complaints. Some engineers and electrical officers raised red flags. The wiring was experimental, the insulation prone to overheating. The hull structure, too open to fire, spread. But shipbuilders, eager to meet deadlines and push innovation, pressed ahead. In late 1931, she began her maiden journey eastward, sailing from Marseille to Yokohama. Though she completed that first leg, minor incidents along the way gave rise to rumors. Lights flickering, electrical malfunctions, a persistent, acrid smell that crew couldn't trace. But by the time she departed Yokohama in April 1932 to return to France, there was an additional reason to keep attention focused on the Georges Philippar. Albert Londres had come aboard. Albert Londres was no ordinary journalist. He was fearless, respected, and hated by many in power. In the years leading up to 1932, he'd exposed brutal abuses in French penal colonies like Devil's Island and Cayenne. He had written about the horrifying conditions in French African colonies and the exploitation of laborers. He'd uncovered scandals in the French Foreign Legion, exposed corruption in the rubber trade, and fearlessly documented what others ignored. His investigations led to government inquiries. His writings reached every corner of France, and they made enemies, powerful ones. His latest assignment had taken him through China, India, and Indochina, where he was reportedly working on a new exposé, this time about organized crime, political corruption, and the collusion of French business interests in Asia. He wrote to colleagues that he was coming home with material that would make a lot of noise. He boarded the MS Georges Philippar with a typewriter, a suitcase, and a satchel full of notes and documents. He would never step off the ship again. May 16th, 1932. The Georges Philippar had made her stop in Aden and was 145 miles off the coast when the fire broke out. It started in the early morning hours in, or near, a first-class cabin, though the exact location has never been determined. Within minutes, flames had raced through the ship's ventilation system. The mahogany interiors, beautiful but flammable, acted as a fuse. Carpets ignited. Furniture collapsed. Light fixtures burst into sparks. The fire moved faster than anyone expected. By 2:15 a.m., entire decks were choking in black smoke. Crew members tried to shut off ventilation dampers, but the ship's electrical systems began to fail. Communication with the engine room was lost. Power faltered. Water pumps were useless. Panic spread. Some lifeboats were lowered. Others jammed on their rails. Survivors later described passengers leaping into the sea in desperation or clinging to burning railings, refusing to let go of loved ones. In one particularly haunting account, a father was seen holding his baby in his arms, wrapped in wet towels, waiting for a lifeboat that never came. The ship's radio operator managed to get out an SOS before the flames reached the communications room. But the message was cut off mid-transmission. Rescue ships scrambled, but it would take hours to reach the Philippar. Many passengers never made it that far. Among the missing was Albert Londres. At first, confusion reigned. Survivors gave conflicting stories. Some thought they'd seen him alive during the early stages of the fire. Others believed he never left his cabin. A steward claimed he'd tried to wake Londres but found his door locked. Another said he saw him near the engine room. Why he'd be there, no one could say. Later, his body was found among the burned remains, badly charred, difficult to identify. His satchel of notes was missing, gone presumably in the fire, or so they said. Rumors began almost immediately. Some claimed Londres had been deliberately prevented from leaving his cabin, that the door had been sealed or tampered with, that someone in the chaos had taken his documents and ensured he wouldn't return. One French intelligence agent, years later, allegedly admitted that Londres had been a problem for certain figures in the colonial administration. Another survivor claimed that just days before the fire, he'd seen a man in a naval uniform enter Londres's cabin late at night. But no official inquiry ever found evidence of foul play. And yet, some facts lingered. The faulty wiring had been flagged before the ship ever sailed, but nothing had been done. The placement of fire extinguishers had been insufficient. No sprinkler system had been installed, and the fire spread too fast, too explosively, to match the typical profile of an electrical fire alone. The government blamed negligence, the shipping company blamed bad luck. But for those who believed Albert Londres had been carrying damning evidence against powerful institutions, the Philippar looked less like a tragedy and more like a cover-up. In the days following the fire, surviving passengers were brought to Djibouti and later to France. Families mourned, tributes were paid. The shipping line quietly retired plans for similar vessels. The Philippar, though she didn't fully sink, was beyond saving. She was scrapped where she drifted, in disgrace. Back in France, Albert Londres was buried with honors. The government praised him as a hero. His name was given to a prestigious annual journalism prize, and his final manuscript, whatever it may have been, was never found. His last story died with him, or was taken. Today, the story of the Philippar has faded into obscurity, buried beneath decades of newer disasters. But for maritime historians and journalists, it remains a haunting chapter. A symbol of how innovation without caution can be deadly. A reminder that not all deaths at sea are accidental. And a case where the sea didn't just swallow a ship, it silenced a voice. Thank you for listening to The Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.